In the remote northwest of Australia, 1,000 miles by road from Perth, in the spectacular Hamersley Ranges, is Australia's only ever blue asbestos mine. Flying over Wittenoom Gorge, you can see its waste still plastered on the walls of the valley to which it clings. The mine, whose operator was Australian Blue Asbestos, a subsidiary of CSR, closed more than 20 years ago, yet still it claims lives. Nearby, on the wide open plain, is the town of Wittenoom. Set up in the 1940s to house the mine's workers, it has over time been home to 20,000 people. Today, its streets are deserted. The cinema is closed, so is the store, and so is the school. Wittenoom is dying, a long, slow death, just like many of the people who once worked here.
This is my brother Frank. He passed away with cancer in 1982, January 1982. He worked in Wittenoom as a truck driver in the mill.
And what about these two?
This is my mother and my stepfather. That's Esther and Phil McKenna. My mother died of mesothelioma in 1975, September 1975. And my stepfather, Phil McKenna, died in 1970, 10th of October 1970, with asbestosis.
And they also at Wittenoom?
They were both in Wittenoom, yes.
He was the chef boss, in fact, with all of the mine?
Yes, in the mill.
Mill?
In the mill.
And who's that?
This is my husband, Ron. He died in February 1978 of asbestosis. He was a transport officer in Wittenoom. He did 12 months in the mine when he first went to Wittenoom, and then he was transport officer. He worked under Don Ecott.
How old was he?
When he died, he was 50. He was coming up to his 51st birthday when he passed away.
Have you been on for a long time?
Yes, 20 years we were married.
And who's that?
This is my sister, Virginia, and her husband, Edo. Eddie died in 1979 of asbestosis and cancer. He was in Wittenoom too. He worked in the mill.
It's quite a harvest, isn't it, really?
Yes, well, 3 sisters were widowed in 14 months.
Valerie Doyle grew up in Wittenoom and raised her family there, but she had gone there when just a child herself. For 10 years or more, she and her brother, mother, stepfather, sisters and in-laws lived in Wittenoom, with most of them working in the mine or at the mill. For 10 years, they breathed the asbestos dust that has killed so many of them, and not once, it seems, were they warned of any dangers.
Does that make you angry?
Yes. Yes, it makes me very wild. Very, very wild. I wouldn't have lost my husband or my parents if it hadn't been for the asbestos. I'm sorry. But nobody deserves to die the way that they died. It's cruel. But nobody wants to know. Just nobody. It's a cruel death. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, sorry.
Barbara Lee is Valerie's sister. Her husband, Ray Lee, has asbestosis and has recently had a stroke. They used to love dancing.
3 nights a week we used to go. When I was in my teens, 7 nights a week. I couldn't wait to get dressed and off, just to get down and hear that music and dance. Now there's nothing like that at all, nothing.
Why not?
Because Ray can't do it.
I used to love dancing with Barbara. And I used to hate any other bloke that come picked her up before I could get out of her. That's true. We used to dance lovely together.
How do you spend your time nowadays?
Sitting in the chair, go shopping for half an hour, sit in the chair, and he goes to bed. And I'll sit here and read.
What does it feel like to have the disease?
It's terrible. I've got pain all the day. I've got pain now. I used to lay in bed there and I'm kicking all the time. Make me feet from mouth open, make me mouth open. Like that. I couldn't understand what it was. Made me do that.
Do you blame anybody for it?
Yes, CSO.
Why?
Because I got asbestosis from up there, and that is causing me pain in my lungs.
In 1948, in the shadow of the Hamersley Range, a town was born. A town which in 4 years has grown to be the largest inland town in the north of Western Australia, Wittenoom.
When Wittenoom was built in the 1940s, the north of Western Australia was almost virgin territory. But in the far-off Hamersley Ranges were the nation's only commercial deposits of blue asbestos, and one company wanted to get at them. In 1943, CSR bought a handful of mining leases around Wittenoom and started development. Australian Blue Asbestos was the company that employed these men. It owned the mine and operated it. But Australian Blue Asbestos, in turn, was owned by CSR, and all its active directors were, in fact, CSR employees. CSR, or the Colonial Sugar Refining Company, is now Australia's 5th largest industrial enterprise. Set up in the 1850s, CSR had long relied on cutting sugarcane for a living, but they were looking for new fields to conquer. And the search took them to Wittenoom. The Wittenoom venture was backed by state and federal governments, and it started in 1944 with high hopes. It would boost the war effort, it would tap the West's mineral wealth. Here was a brave enterprise that the newsreels claimed could bring nothing but good.
Each year, 6,000 tons of refined fibre leave Australia's only blue asbestos field. But the immensity of the known deposits ensure a long and prosperous future, with a town born as a result of the faith and enterprise of the operating companies, a company responsible for many fine achievements in the industrial history of Australia.
Sadly, the predictions were wrong. Today, the mine site lies abandoned, as it has done for the last 22 years. Closed in 1966, it almost never made a profit. Today, you can still see the scars it left on the landscape. What you can't see is the havoc it wrought on the people. And nor would you guess that this is the site of an awful industrial disaster, Australia's Bhopal. Asbestos-related disease is likely to kill 1 in 6 of those who worked here, and that, at a minimum, would be 1,000 deaths. Spattered around the mine site at Wittenoom is the stuff that's caused all the trouble, crucidolite or blue asbestos. Now banned virtually throughout the world, even the smallest exposure involves danger. Pulled apart in the hands, you can see the fibres, but it's the ones you don't see, the microscopic fibres or dust in the air you breathe, that can kill or cripple. Most commonly, what it can give you is the disease asbestosis.
Asbestosis is scarring of lung tissue due to asbestos deposition in the lung. It's a progressive disease, results in more and more scarring with the passage of time, and as the scarring increases, lung function diminishes and people become progressively more short of breath. This can go on to an end-stage condition where people with asbestosis are unable to engage in any sort of physical activity. We would describe them as being respiratory cripples.
One of the complications of asbestosis, recognised since the 1940s, is cancer of the lung. Exposure to asbestos at Wittenoom more than doubled the risk of contracting it. But there is another cancer that blue asbestos produces, not identified until 1960. It is uniformly fatal, and it kills its victims on average within 9 months of diagnosis. Its name is mesothelioma.
If you want an idea of what mesothelioma does to you, take a look at this. That is a normal lung. It's about the size and shape that a lung should be. And that is the lung of someone who's died from mesothelioma. All this white stuff around it is the tumour. And you can see how it's grown right around the lung and crushed it to about a quarter of its normal size. Now what has happened is that the victim has essentially been suffocated to death. As one doctor told us, it's rather like having concrete poured into your chest. What are you diagnosed as having?
Mesothelioma, malignant mesothelioma, which was diagnosed in April '86 and been confirmed. So, unfortunately.
What do your doctors say about your chances?
Well, I don't think they give me any chance. I did have an operation in July '86, which the main reason for that was to attempt to prolong things, and I think they were quite happy with that. It has prolonged matters somewhat. But as far as anything long term, no, I'm not really looking to that.
Come on, Terrell. Good shot.
Oh, good one.
Jag.
Oh, sneaky.
Till 1986, Peter Hayes and his family had not a care in the world. The children were strapping and healthy, they prospered at school, they won all the local sporting trophies. And when the parents read in the papers that ex-Wittenoom workers were dying of cancer and asbestosis, they didn't give it a thought. Peter had worked in the bagging section of the mill at Wittenoom, but that had been fully 30 years before. And what's more, he'd been there just 2 months.
Peter just said, oh, you know, wasn't I lucky that I was only up there a couple of months? And it was just, I really didn't give any thought to it at all. Never thought he was in danger at all.
Nor did I. One of those things that doesn't really happen to you or the people you know,
No, it
happen to someone else.
That's right.
Is it an unpleasant disease?
I'd say very unpleasant. Probably at this stage, the disease isn't that terrible. I'm not getting pain as such, a lot of discomfort, but it's probably more the psychological thing. You take away hope, and you take a lot away.
Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies above. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide open country that I love. Don't fence me in. Let me be by myself in the evening breeze and listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me off forever, but I ask you please, don't fence me in.
Just turn me loose, let me straddle my old saddle underneath the western sky.
For the good folk of Wittenoom, ignorance was bliss. Had they known the full dangers of living here, it's hard to believe many would have stayed. But, unaware of the risks, these were happy times. For some, perhaps, the best days of their life.
Was a ride to the ridge where the west commences, and gaze at the moon till I lose my senses, and I can't look at hobbles, and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in.
Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies. Don't fence
It was a life away from the cares of the city, a life at times of fun. And once a year, there were the races.
country that I love. Don't fence me in. Let me be by myself in the evening breeze and listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me off forever, but I ask you please.
We had our dances and the races. And yes, there was good times. Plenty of good times and plenty of laughter. When we used to go dancing on the hotel veranda with Mrs. Whittaker playing her radiogram. Yes. And in the old hall. We had a lot of good times, a lot of fun.
But not everyone liked Wittenoom. It was miles from anywhere, dust-ridden, and for half the year unbearably hot. Getting people to work here was a constant problem for the company, and making them stay was even harder. Almost half those who came to Wittenoom had left within 3 months. For many, hitching a ride on the asbestos trucks was the only way to escape. One man even loaded up his wife, furniture, and 7 children to get them out. Underground, conditions were hot, dusty, and cramped. Base workers spent hours doubled up on their haunches as they drilled into the rock because headroom was only 40 inches. And since Australian miners from Kalgoorlie's goldfields wouldn't stand for that, the mines owners had to recruit overseas and rely heavily on immigrant workers.
Migrants from many parts of the world come to Wittenoom, and of the total population of nearly 900, 3/5 are migrants, and 20 different nationalities are employed by the operating company.
In the 10 years after World War II, 1 million new Australians set foot on these shores for the first time. They came from a Europe torn by war and ruled by rationing, and they had great hopes of what they would find. To many, it was a disappointment. Those who landed in the west at Fremantle talk of tin sheds and little else. And there are stories of women thronging the quay to yell, "Go back, go back, there are no jobs here." But for those who touched down in the red dust of Wittenoom, the jolt must have been even greater. They were marooned in a hot, strange land like nothing they'd ever seen before.
By and large, they were in a state of shock, you see. I have actually seen guys coming down from the plane, the DC-3, and they walked straight back up the plane, back into the plane, and they just looked around because it's flat, and then they've got these hills, and it's brown spinifex.
Well, when I came off the plane on the 16th of January, it was that hot, we just took the air, it just took the breath away. So, which all I thought is, what the heck am I doing here?
Otto Pongratz went to Wittenoom when he was just 21. An Austrian emigrant, he was sent there by the West Australian government because there was no other work available. His is a typical story, and typical too is his account of conditions in the Wittenoom asbestos mill.
You couldn't see your hand before your eyes. You couldn't breathe. As soon as you get into towards the mill, the whole gorge was one cloud of dust. So it wouldn't matter where you are. You couldn't escape the dust. Everything was white and grey.
Tell me, Ray, what were conditions like in the mill?
Terrible. At the worst times, you couldn't see from one end of the mill to the other.
You were on the bagging section at one stage, weren't you?
Yeah.
What was that like?
That's the worst part of the lot. That's the main killer.
Can you describe
These blokes are handling it with their hands. And when you get a good run with plenty of asbestos in the rock, you know, coming out, often they'd get blocked up as they're coming down to the baggers underneath, and they'd have to stretch up and pull this down, you know. And that's what I call literally eating and breathing asbestosis, trying to claw that down. You're looking up at it like that.
And it's all coming down on your face, is it?
Mm.
Even today, more than 2 decades since the wheels of Wittenoom last turned, you can see what it must have been like. Almost everything is covered with fibre and dust. It's caked onto conveyor belts. It sticks to the structure of the building. Everything is coated as if it's been caught in a deadly grey-blue shower.
It's like cement, isn't it?
Well, it is, but under microscope or under magnifying glass, you find that it's fibre. And dust, of course.
Some 30 years ago, Rollo Sabatini was an electrician here. Now a successful businessman in Perth, we brought him back to show us around.
Look, this is all dust.
God, yeah.
It's all dust. As you can see, that's been here for 22 years, and yet it's still here. This is the kind of dust that was flying around, and people had to wear it in their skin, in their face, in their nose, in their ears, everywhere. I'll show you another one. This is the material that people were wearing. They were breathing it all day long. And when you come out of your work and you go for your showers, that's what you would be looking like. And when you go under the shower with that, the shower will be black. The water will be pitch black, running on the drying. And then you start to recognize your mates. Only after they went through the shower, you could tell who he was. So this material was flying everywhere.
But how much was known in the 1950s of the serious dangers to health posed by asbestos dust? Dangers that have brought people to their deaths.
You see how, that's the fibre.
Mm. And could those who ran Wittenoom have foreseen the tragedy? These questions are currently being mulled over by the Supreme Court of Western Australia, where there are some 300 claims for damages by former Wittenoom workers or their families. The claims allege negligence by Australian Blue Asbestos and/or CSR. Now, the whole issue of negligence is extremely complicated, and only a court can decide it. But central to all the cases is whether the companies could and should have foreseen the serious damage to health and prevented it. And at the heart of that matter is what was the state of medical knowledge at the time. The first thing to say is that mesothelioma was not linked to asbestos till 1960. So till then, no one could have foreseen that people exposed to asbestos would die from that disease. But the health dangers of asbestos were known about. In 1955, in a famous study published in the British Journal of Industrial Medicine, asbestos had been definitively linked to lung cancer. And indeed, evidence for the link had been widely accepted by doctors in the late 1940s. And as for asbestosis, that had been known about since before 1900, with the first deaths in British factories weaving asbestos reported in 1907. As early as 1918, American insurers were reportedly refusing cover to asbestos manufacturers because of the health risks. And in 1930, a British government report documented at great length the seriousness of the disease and how to prevent it. So by the 1950s, the victims are saying in court, the dangers of asbestosis, at least, should have been well known, certainly among the medical profession.
The facts about asbestosis, the relationship, the hazardous nature of the asbestos particle had been well known in the literature, the general literature, since the mid-1920s, and I think would have been known by any competent physician.
When you say the facts were well known, could one have known at the time that exposure to that sort of dust could kill people?
Yes. Unequivocally, the answer would be yes.
So could the company have known that?
If they had proper advisors, they should have known, because the British, the American, the South African literature, wherever asbestos was being mined or manufactured, those English-speaking countries, there was an abundance of literature which made it quite clear that the asbestos particle was injurious to lung tissue and would produce asbestosis, and a proportion of people with asbestosis would ultimately die.
This man is Keith Osborne Brown. A director or managing director of Australian Blue Asbestos for 23 years, he was also, at the same time, a senior employee of CSR. In recent court cases, Keith Brown has said he was aware of health risks of asbestos in 1944, but he believed damage to health would result only after 10 or 20 years exposure to asbestos, and then only with some people. He also believed, he said, that regular X-rays would detect any damage before it was serious. On cross-examination, Mr. Brown was asked,
Mr. Brown, in the period 1943 to 1955, did you ever hear of a possible association between asbestos and lung cancer?
And he replied,
the answer's yes.
In qualifying this, he said he knew in 1944 that asbestosis could lead to death or incapacity. Keith Brown was also asked whether he or Australian Blue Asbestos, or CSR, had before 1961 approached any doctor or any public health department or made any special inquiries about the health risks of asbestos. There, the answer was no. In the 1940s, the Flying Doctor was a regular visitor to Wittenoom. Based in nearby Port Hedland, one of its doctors at the time was an expert in industrial disease, who would later become a professor of medicine. His name was Eric Saint, and his first visit to the mine marked the start of a 20-year battle between the company and officialdom over dust at the mine and mill.
When I first saw them, I really was quite appalled. It's the first day I went there, I was shown the mine itself, and it seemed pretty dusty, and I did know something about asbestos and the industrial hazard that it constituted, but I was even more appalled when I went up to the head of the gorge, where they had this hopper thing where they try to separate the stone from the asbestos fibre, you know, crushing it and then getting the fibre. It's just a huge cloud of dust hanging over the air, and this really, I felt very unhappy about indeed.
So unhappy was Eric Saint that he immediately addressed a letter to his superiors in the Department of Public Health in Perth. Referring to Wittenoom as this dump of dumps, Saint warned them in the bluntest possible terms of future consequences.
The asbestos mine at Wittenoom, let the record state, operates without any sort of dust extractor whatsoever. In a year or two, ABA will produce the richest and most lethal crop of asbestosis cases in the world's literature.
And having written that, Eric Saint says he then warned the company.
I also spoke to the management. I expressed my concern there and spoke in no uncertain terms, and said that this was a very hazardous occupational situation, that almost inevitably there would be patients with cases of asbestosis in 4 or 5 years' time.
What was their reaction?
It's hard for me, after 40 years, to judge. They were polite people. They listened to me politely. They didn't commit themselves. I don't know what correspondence took place between them and the headquarters, but I made no bones about my anxiety.
Whatever the company's response to Eric Saint's warning, the dust hazard did not go away. 5 months after Saint had written his letter, inspectors from the West Australian Mines Department were reporting to their superiors on a recent visit to Wittenoom. They said, bluntly,
conditions in the mill, from a dust point of view, were most unsatisfactory.
And they went on.
On completion of the inspection, an interview was held with the manager and attention was drawn to the danger to the health of the men.
But that warning didn't do the trick either. 2 years later, the mines inspectors filed another report on Wittenoom, which said,
from a dust point of view, conditions in the mill have definitely worsened. At crib time, the men were eating more dust than food.
In 1952, the inspectors reported in similar terms. They did so again in 1954. And then in 1955, the mines department threatened to close the mill because of the disgraceful working conditions. In 1958, Australian Blue Asbestos built a new mill for treating the asbestos fibre, and with it came a brand new system of dust extraction at a cost of £50,000. But if that improved matters, it was not for long. Only 1 year after the new mill opened, Wittenoom was visited by a man who would later become West Australia's Commissioner of Public Health, Jim McNulty.
And my impression of the mine was that, I said at the time, it was the worst I'd ever seen in terms of dust and housekeeping.
What in particular, apart from the dust? I mean, you say housekeeping.
Well, there was a general poor control of dust. There was dust everywhere. You got dust in your hair, got it in your teeth when you walked around the mill. If you put your hand on a railing, your hand came off black. After a very short time, you were filthy yourself, because everything you touched was dirty.
Again, reports from mines department inspectors confirmed that the dust problem continued. In 1961, they said conditions were very dusty and could be termed critical. In 1962, they found them worse and at new record levels. And in 1963, they reported them worse still.
When the mines inspectors came to Wittenoom to check on dust levels, and come they did, they were armed with a machine called a conimeter. It works by firing a small amount of dust onto a glass plate, and then you treat that plate and you look at the result through the microscope. You then count the individual dust particles one by one, so you can see it's not a particularly accurate method. And it's also a method which has an upper limit. There are times when it simply can't cope because there is so much dust. It then gives the reading of 1,000 plus, and that reading was commonplace here at Wittenoom.
In 1963, with the problem at its height, another set of new dust extractors was installed. But again, it seems, the fix was a failure. When an outside consultant hired by the mines department visited the mill in 1965, his more sophisticated equipment revealed dust levels higher than ever before. On the bagging section, the dust floating in the air was almost 20 times the amount the WA Mines Department regarded as safe, and it was up to 100 times the levels set down at the time in the British asbestos industry. The consultant's damning report highlighted poor maintenance, holes in ventilation ducts, machines that leaked clouds of dust, covers that were not in place, and his verdict was quite clear. Much of the dust could have been prevented.
What did you want to do with the mine back then?
Close it.
8 years before the mine was finally closed, the first bunch of cases of asbestosis from Wittenoom had begun to appear. Jim McNulty, then chest physician at Kalgoorlie, dealt with some of the victims and subsequently fought with the mines department and the people who ran Wittenoom to get something done. Even now, he's not sure whether anybody listened.
By 1958, it was apparent that we were going to get the crop of asbestosis, which had been threatened. Quite serious and advanced disease was developing in relatively young men who had had very short exposures to dust. In the Eastern States gold mines, it took 25 to 30 years for a man to develop dust disease, whereas in Wittenoom it was taken between 3 and 4 years. And the disease was much more advanced and serious and disabling than the silicosis in the gold mines.
Do you put those findings to the company?
I put the findings to the company. and I put it to the department itself. And in fact, my report was published in the annual report of the Commissioner of Public Health, tabled in Parliament in 1959.
You know, what's so hard to understand about the whole Wittenoom saga is why it was allowed to happen. The warnings seem remarkably clear. On the one hand, there's no doubt that Australian blue asbestos did try to control the dust, but on the other hand, there's no question that their efforts were inadequate and that they could be seen to have failed. Now, failure is a word you can't escape in this Wittenoom story. Failure by the Western Australian government and failure by the company, and not trivial failure at that. Because of it, many people have died or will die. What are your personal feelings about a tragedy that you foresaw and warned of and nevertheless happened?
I feel very sad indeed.
Setting aside who, do you think there are people who should be blamed?
I don't like the word blame. I think blame is a matter for the courts. I find it sad that no action was taken at the time by those in positions of responsibility.
The city of Perth and Western Australia are built on the wealth of mining. Minerals made this town. Be it gold, iron ore, or even asbestos, most of the money here started life underground. WA's mining heritage may well explain why Wittenoom was never cleaned up or closed down. And it may too affect the aftermath, the massive legal battle for compensation that's now taking place. Of the 300 damages claims concerning Wittenoom now before the courts here, not one so far has been successful. Wally Simpson's case against Australian blue asbestos, now called Medalco, is still under appeal. But the judge has ruled that Simpson, who worked in the mine in the early 1960s, does not have an asbestos-related disease. Joan Jewston's case in 1979 against Australian blue asbestos failed. She had worked at Wittenoom in the 1950s and later contracted mesothelioma. The judge ruled that her employers could not have foreseen damage to her health, not least because the office she worked in was 100 yards from the asbestos mill, and her exposure to high levels of dust had not been demonstrated.
In this morning I asked him, he said, there is no cure. It could be gone 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, but there is not future for me.
Reno Pedrotti's case against Australian blue asbestos didn't fail, but nor did it succeed. Before the court could convene at his hospital bed, he died of mesothelioma.
When I took an X-ray, one half of the X-ray was blank, which meant that the whole lung was filled with fluid, or the outside.
And mesothelioma decided this man's case too. Frank Mars, another former Wittenoom worker, died in July 1977, shortly after starting proceedings.
And then I was told, when I did a biopsy, and after the pathology reports came through, there was a malignant tumor.
Mesothelioma is in the right lung. There's no hope for me.
2 more mesothelioma victims have a case now before the courts in Perth. One of them, Tim Barrow, worked at Wittenoom in the late 1940s, in the store next to the mill.
I'd sooner have my health than a compensation.
The other, his co-plaintiff, is Peter Hayes. The defendants in the Hayes-Barrow case are Australian Blue Asbestos and CSR. But CSR argues it has no responsibility at all in law to Hayes or anyone at Wittenoom because it did not employ the men and did not run the mine. The issues in the Hayes-Barrow case are extremely complex, but the defendants both argue that in the 1950s they could not have foreseen Hayes and Barrow would contract mesothelioma because the disease was only discovered in 1960. The plaintiffs, on the other hand, maintain that serious damage to Hayes and Barrow's health was foreseeable because the lethal risks of asbestosis and lung cancer were known about in the 1940s. The case is already the longest running in West Australian legal history, and it may well become a landmark. If the plaintiffs fail, there may not be more money to fight another case. If the plaintiffs succeed, a flood of claims could be unleashed. Many millions of dollars are at stake.
I think we'd all be very, very angry and very disappointed if they do lose this one. because I feel that there is just cause for them to take the blame.
And it's likely to be the last if you do lose, isn't it?
I'd say so, yes.
How great a danger is it that you'll die before there is a verdict?
Before the case finishes? Well, quite frankly, I don't know. If you had have asked me that 3 months ago, I would have said, well, I'd still be reasonably well by the end of the case finishes, which was due to finish in March. But it appears at this stage, it'd still have at least 2 to 3 months to go. And I'm getting more breathless, you know, as time goes on. I'm not really very active at all at the moment.
Peter Hayes died on Good Friday. Judgment in his case had still not been reached. His death will substantially reduce the damages payable if his claim is successful. More to the point, unless his claim succeeds against CSR, there may be no money at all. Australian Blue Asbestos hasn't enough to pay. So far, the tally of deaths from Wittenoom is around 300. No one knows exactly. But with mesothelioma, the disease has yet to get into its stride. Tony Whittaker runs a funeral business in a town 2 hours south of Perth, but he once lived and worked at Wittenoom.
A lot of the people that I worked with have died. 4 members of one family I buried. Ron Jones, his brother-in-law Rossi, Don Ecott, and Mrs. McKenna. Her husband was a mill supervisor in Wittenoom for years.
Your own family's been affected by it as well, haven't you?
Yes. Lost one sister through it. She was a school kiddie up there. And she died when she was 28 years old, mother of 2 little kiddies.
What did she die of?
Mesothelioma. She was only a baby when she went up there, but she went to school in Wittenoom, and all the school grounds and everything was just asbestos tailings. Because I used to cart a lot of the tailings into town when I was driving the trucks. Roads were made of it, sporting grounds, bricks for the hotel were made of it, the shopping centre. A lot of the buildings, everything that was, everything concrete was made with asbestos tailings from the mill.
This is, again, my 2 children, David and Bronwyn. This was taken after they had been playing in the yard and got absolutely dirty, as you can see.
And that, the dust there was very full of asbestos, wasn't it?
Yes, in the tailings, yes. There was nowhere else for them to play but in that.
Do you worry about their future at all?
Yes, I do. I think anybody who had children up there would worry about them. Because they played in it. All children played in it. There was nothing else for you to do. You didn't know the dangers, so you just let your children play in it.
Ellen, you want something to eat? Daniel? Banana. Banana. Here, mate.
Yeah.
You want to drink, Tim?
Yeah. What did you get over the shop?
On a sunny Saturday, Perth's Kings Park is the perfect place for a picnic. One can only wish that there were more days just like it, because for Barbara Tyler, there may not be.
I'm not trying.
You can caddy.
Yeah, you and Daniel are going with Daddy. You can be caddies.
Bob Lamont, Barbara's father, was the town policeman at Wittenoom in the 1950s. He took his wife and 3 children to live there too. Now aged 34, with 2 young children of her own, Barbara has been told she has mesothelioma. She'll be lucky to live out the year.
What about the kids? Have you told them?
Not everything at the moment.
What do they know, or what do they think?
They know I'm sick and I have to watch my diet, and I can't do what I could before. That's about all.
And are you going to tell them?
Yes. If we feel it's necessary, we will.
When did you first find out you had this thing?
6 months ago.
And how? Did you feel ill, presumably?
No, I couldn't breathe, and obviously I had fluid on the lungs. And then after some more tests, they told me.
And how have you coped with it?
I've coped very well. I'm very positive, and there's nothing much doctors can do, but I will try. I will get through it.
How? What are you going to do?
I'll get through it. I'm positive. Meditation, alternative medicine, diet.
You must feel desperately unlucky.
That'd be the word, unlucky. Well, no, I feel really sick because someone or something did it to me. Something caused it. Otherwise you don't get it.
You feel angry.
Very angry at someone.
Barbara Tyler isn't likely to win damages from anybody, nor will others at Wittenoom who didn't work either in the mine or the mill. And there will be others like her. She was not the only child there.
Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide country that I love. Don't fence me in.
In the years to come, there will be many more victims of Australia's greatest industrial tragedy. Perhaps 700 more victims. There will be families torn apart, children orphaned, lives destroyed. And as the legal wrangle about responsibility goes on, one can only ask, how was it ever allowed to happen?
Let me straddle my old saddle underneath the western skies.
On my cayuse, let me wander over yonder till I see the mountains rise. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. I want to ride to the ridge where the west commences and gaze at the moon till I lose my senses, and I can't look at hobbles and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in. No. Papa, don't you fence me